Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the high cost of prescription drugs is a huge problem. Let's talk about the best way to tackle this public health crisis. Ms. Reilly, your association, which is called Pharma, represents brand name drug companies, and you said in your testimony that, quote, the competitive market is the engine that drives the drug industry. So I take it you think that market solutions are the most effective way to deal with the rising price of drugs.
I do believe that markets lower costs, yes.
Good. I love markets, and I also believe in market-based solutions. So let's talk about one of the best market-based solutions, and that's competition. If the restrictions that prevent purchasers from importing the exact same drugs at lower prices from places like Canada were removed, we'd see some real competition and we'd see some lower prices. Another market solution is negotiation. If the federal government were allowed to negotiate more competitive drug prices for Medicare beneficiaries, then prices would come down. So, Ms. Reilly, you've already said that pharma opposes importation of drugs from Canada. Let me ask about letting the federal government negotiate with drug companies over Medicare prices, these two market-based solutions.
Well, I would argue price controls are not a market-based solution. When foreign countries...
I'm sorry, I didn't ask about price controls. I asked about bringing in drugs that
bringing in drugs from other
here.
countries that price control their products is not a market-based way to get to drug prices.
So you would be in favor of drug importation from any place that's not doing what you call price control?
I would argue that almost every country outside of the U.S.
so there's no
artificially
place that we
limits
could import
prices.
From that would satisfy your requirements. How about the federal government competing and actually having some competition and saying we're going to negotiate prices?
I think there's often a fallacy that because the federal government is not setting prices in Medicare that there's not negotiation, and that couldn't be further from the truth. As we've seen in the Medicare Part D program, there's been robust negotiation. Rebates are over 35% on average in Part D.
So you're
Premiums have been low.
Let me just stop you there. So I just want to make sure I understand the point of the group that you represent here and lobby for, and that is it that the federal government ought to be able to negotiate all drug prices?
No, we don't believe the federal government's in the best position. We have rapid market consolidation in the pharmacy benefit manager space that exerts significant pressure to the tune of over $100 billion in rebates last year.
I understand that you have other concerns, but, you know, drug competition from Canada, price negotiation, are market solutions. They're not government mandates. And I would have thought that if you believe in market solutions, you would have embraced them.
Well, I don't believe that price controls are market-based solutions. And I also think that you need to look at the downsides that happen in those countries, which is patients don't get the kind of access that they get to therapies here in the United States.
I realize that you can call it price controls, but this is a real question of whether or not there's any place else for consumers to go to purchase drugs, or whether or not the federal government can negotiate on a drug-by-drug basis every time taxpayers are picking up the ticket.
Well, the Congressional Budget Office has looked at this.
And the organizations who are testifying here today spent a combined total of $30 million lobbying Congress last year. Pharma, your organization, is responsible for almost 3/4 of that total, and a lot of that money that is spent lobbying Congress is to keep drug prices high. That's what improves profitability for your industry and the companies you represent. And here's what I think is really wrong about this. You talk about wanting market solutions, but your industry isn't based on competitive markets. It's based on totally artificial, taxpayer-granted monopolies. Companies invent new drugs, and then the government hands the companies the exclusive right to manufacture and sell those drugs at whatever prices they want for decades. So I just have a little bit of time left. But I want to ask, do you know the average length of a government-granted monopoly for top-selling drugs in this country?
10 to 12 years.
Yeah, 10 to 12 years. The law says 5. No. 5 years of exclusivity, but drug companies game the system. According to a 2015 analysis by researchers at Harvard, companies end up with a monopoly that lasts a medium length of 12 and a half years.
Senator Warren, patents are 20 years long.
Mr. Chairman.
20 years. That is how long a pharmaceutical patent is. We also have 5 years of data exclusivity.
The law says 5 years of exclusivity on the basic drugs.
Absolutely.
And the average, you think the Harvard study, they don't know how to do it there to study how much money you're making off these things or how long you have exclusivity?
Senator Warren, I'm simply saying that companies have 5 years of data exclusivity. Immediately after that, a generic company can get to market. And let me tell you, they try very hard to get to market as soon as they can.
And you're saying that the drug companies don't game the system at all to expand their exclusivity to an average of 12 and a half years. It just happens.
Senator Warren, patents are 20 years long. Exclusivity is a completely different issue.
Try the story on someone else who's going to be willing to listen to it. You know, taxpayers watch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You can finish your.
No. I just wanted to say taxpayers watch when we've granted exclusivity to these companies, and then they watch as the prices go up, and there's not a darn thing for taxpayers to do about it. This is just fundamentally wrong.
Thank you, Senator Warren.
Just wanted to do that. Sorry, I haven't been here for the whole thing. I've had some other stuff to do, and I ran back so that I could do this, and so you'll excuse me. It's actually, I didn't run back. This is just such an exciting hearing. It seems like from your testimony and but mainly from your testimony that like every one of you in some way or another is responsible for getting prices down. That's what it seemed like from your testimony. And I think Senator Young touched on this, but I want to try to go over it again for myself. The U.S. spends more on prescription drugs than any industrialized country, in part because drug prices are higher in the U.S. than in any other country. The drug industry pushes back and says that these price comparisons don't take into account the discounts that manufacturers give to insurers and other actors in the system. So to cut through that, I'd like to ask you some questions. Let's use the drug Advair, which is an asthma inhaler example. Where is that produced? It's produced in North Carolina. So it's a drug that's produced in the United States. Ms. Reilly, what is the list price for Advair in the United States? And how does it compare to the cost in Canada, France, and Germany?
I honestly do not know the list price of Advair off the top of my head, Senator. Okay. I'd have to get back to you on that.
Sure. That's very understandable. I want to ask you the price of every drug. See how you do. No. A Bloomberg News report from 2015 found that the list price for Advair was $309.60 in the United States. Accounting for, say, a 50% discount, then the price would be $154.80, which is still higher than the price in Canada, which in 2015 was $74.12. The price in Germany, which was $37.71. And the price in France, which was $34.52. Ms. Reilly, why are prices so much higher in the United States for a drug produced in the United States? And this is true for drugs that are produced in the United States and not produced in the United States. Why are they so much higher? I think Americans really want to know this, and I think they want to know this because you guys talked about research. Americans pay for a lot of the basic research, right?
Yes.
Yeah, through NIH.
And our industry, yes.
But much of it through the taxpayer pays directly to the NIH to do the basic research. Most of the research you do is not in your industry, is not basic research.
We do a fair amount of basic research.
You do a fair amount.
Yes.
Most of it is not basic research. And I'll give you the figures on that. We'll call that up in a second.
I'm aware.
These higher prices in the United States support high-level profits and some research and development costs, but we also pay these high prices because of the way our system is structured. The laws we set and the clout of the drug industry. For example, Congress passed a law that prohibits the federal government from negotiating with drug manufacturers for lower prices for Medicare, which is the single largest payer for prescription drugs. In those other countries, you have the government able to bargain with the pharmaceutical companies. All of you presented yourself as part of the piece that keeps the prices down. Why are the prices so much higher in this case, assuming a 50% discount from the list price, in a number of cases twice as high, 4 times as high, Canada, France respectively, and more than 4 times as high in Germany. Why? Americans want to know why.